Hey people of the VC, it's Andy Cloudy Mulder. This is going to be a bit of an impromptu, mostly unplanned video. It's as you can tell by the title, it's a response to Randy Wax66 on his competition. I say mostly unplanned. Um, he asked people to show 10 albums that they couldn't live without. If they had to whittle their collection down to 10, what would those 10 be? I thought about this during the week, but I didn't think I'd get a chance to do a video. But I thought, what the heck, let's give it a go. So I grabbed 10 albums. The thing with 10 albums for me is, if I did this video next week, it would probably be 10 different albums with a few the same. But so what I decided to do is, so I mostly show things like heavy metal, hard rock on my channel, but my tastes throughout the years have been quite varied, and there's some other stuff I listen to as well. So what I wanted to do was, and what I thought about actually was, if I only had 10 albums left, how could I represent the music I liked throughout those 10 albums? So this by no means is a list of my top 10 albums of all time. There's lots that I really wish I could have included, but I haven't. I'm going to show them in alphabetical order, not chronological order, because each one has a kind of a different memory associated with me, and it didn't necessarily coincide with when the album came out. So let's get in there. So first up, Blue Oyster Cult, Cultosaurus Erectus. Reminds me of high school years listening to this, especially the song "The Marshall Plan," and dreams of being a rock star myself, although I have no musical ability at all in my body, just a great imagination. So this reminds me of being at school when I first heard this. I had this on a tape that I recorded off somebody, played it to death, absolutely loved it. Didn't get to order a copy until I joined the VC, and this was actually VTLT from Corey's VC channel. And I wouldn't just treasure this because it was part of my first VCLT I ever got, but also because the memories that this album takes me back to my school years, which weren't always necessarily the happiest, but I remembering this album was. So that's the first one, Cultosaurus Erectus. Next up, this is what actually prompted me to make this video. I'm going to be showing this one in an upcoming video, so I was just giving it another spin. But it's one I spin a lot. I mean, Dio Holy Diver from 1983. It's Dio. It's just a great classic album from Ronnie James Dio. There's not a bad song on it, and I could quite happily listen to this any time of day, any day of the week. No specific memories attached to it either, though. It's just I love the album. Next up, again, takes me back to my childhood. Again, I played this to death, and once again, I had this only on tape, but it followed me everywhere. Walkman, wherever I played tape in the house, this was always on. I know it back to front, inside out, and completely love it. And it takes me back to, every time I hear the song, things like "Sweet Child of Mine" is still played on the radio these days, and completely embarrass my kids by just singing along, even the high bits, or probably miming the high bits actually. But yeah, Guns N' Roses' "Appetite for Destruction," an album that I couldn't live without. Number 4, going away from my metal roots. This one, this takes me more back to my student days. Housemartins, London Nil, Hole 4. Obviously, antithesis of heavy metal. This is upbeat. This is it's kind of pop, but it's more of like an indie pop. And Paul Heaton is an amazing vocalist. He has a beautiful voice, and the songs on here, "Happy Hour" probably the most famous, but "Get Up Off Your Knees," "Think for a Minute," "Sitting on a Fence." They're just really good upbeat songs, and it kind of takes me back to being a student, particularly a trip that I had, a holiday I took with some friends. One of the first sort of lads' holidays I went on. I went to visit a friend who was living in Valencia, and I remember them playing Happy Hour in this Spanish club, and me and my friends were just going mental to it, and I think completely freaked out the locals a little bit. But yeah, so something. So I say these 10 albums, I didn't want them all to be metal because I wanted it to reflect some of the likes. And I think if I only had 10 albums, I would want something different just to contrast. So Housemartins, London Nil, Hole 4. Of course, this also has Norman Cook on bass, who became Fatboy Slim. The first ever heavy metal album I owned, and still one of my favourite to date, Live After Death. Always loved Iron Maiden. If I could only be left with one Iron Maiden album, I would choose this one. Obviously, a compilation allows you to revisit and remember all of the other albums, even if you haven't got access to them. And just the whole thing, start to finish, I loved it. Again, I played this to death. This is my original copy from 1985, and I had it on VHS video as well. I've now got it on DVD as well for the show. Yeah, love it. Everything about it. I can not only sing along to this, I can also mime all the audience participation bits and the banter that Bruce Dickinson does. It's a bit sad, really, but yeah, inside out. I also mentioned this in the Elvis Final Guys competition. So this is I might actually quite happily sit to, zone out, and fall asleep to. Again, one of the bands that I really got into when I was a student, and love them ever since. They're from my original hometown, which is Cardiff in Wales. That's Manic Street Preachers. This is the Holy Bible. It's kind of a bit of a turning point album for them. It's the last album they recorded as a 4-piece before the disappearance. I've talked about that before in a video of a band member who went missing and has never been seen since. But this is a particularly dark album. It's rock. It's more of an indie rock, I guess. But James Dean Bradfield, the vocalist, again, one of my favorite vocalists. Is the range of his voice and the emotion is just incredible. So I would always have something from the Manic Street Preachers left behind if I had to get rid of everything else. I don't have too much of their stuff on vinyl. I have everything on CD. But this is one of my favourite albums by them, so I would keep that. My introduction to Metallica really was Master of Puppets. Not a lot I can say about this. I think most people that obviously know Metallica know this album. I think a lot of people who don't know Metallica know of this album. The last album that they had Cliff Burton on. Unfortunately, he'd already passed on before I actually heard of Metallica. But again, an album that I love from start to finish. And if I had only a few albums left, this would be one that I would keep and happily play and listen to over and over again. Now, Randy being a big Ramones fan, that's actually how I got introduced to his channel. I think it was maybe even Vinyl Richie had said that he'd done a big Ramones series of all his collection. I'm slowly but surely going through mine and doing a series as well. Whereas my Ramones collection has breadth. I think I just have about everything once. Wax66 running, he has depth as well. He has different versions of things and an absolutely amazing collection. Now he showed the Ramones' first album, and that would be a natural pick for the Ramones. But if I was just left with 10 albums and I wanted to get a good rounded collection of the kind of things I liked and a little bit of variation, I would go for the Ramones Alive. Apart from the fact that I don't actually have an original copy of the first Ramones album, that may have swayed my judgment slightly. But again, I've got Ramones It's Alive. It's the first 3 or so albums, pretty much in their entirety live. It's a great live album. And what more can I say? Yeah, double album for 24 to 30 tracks. That's the Ramones. Got to have some Ramones in your top 10. And last, no, not last, the penultimate one, Suicidal Tendencies. How Will I Laugh Tomorrow When I Can't Even Smile Today. There's just something about this album. There's no specific memory associated with this one, other than it's just one of my favourite albums of all time. I can listen to it whenever. I just don't think it's dated at all. I think if they've got another album coming out soon. I think if they released this as their new album, it would still sound relevant and as good today as it did back in 1988. I've always liked everything from the Suicidal Tendencies. I've got a better story associated with the debut album, but if I had to choose one, I would go for this one. And last but not least, finally, this is a band called The Wedding Present. It's one of my favourite bands again. They're not a metal band, they're an indie rock band. I think I have just about everything by them. I don't have a lot by them on vinyl. This is their album Seamonsters that came out in 1991. It was quite a different sound. They're quite a jingly jangly indie rock band. Great lyrics. David Gedge, he's basically the leader of the band. He writes most of the lyrics. Some really sort of thought-provoking. They're kind of like anti-love songs in that it's all about having been split up, or he's been wronged by his girlfriend, and he's sort of looking back in angst and all sorts of stuff. Sounds terrible, but I really like it. And this was kind of really swathing guitars, sort of almost like certainly not. If you're familiar with them, it wasn't the jingly jangy style before. It would be a toss up between this and I've got to say George Best, which is probably their best album, my favourite album by them. But I don't have that on vinyl, so I didn't want to include anything on vinyl. So yeah, Seamonsters from Wedding Present 1981 is my 10th. So as I said, my choice of the 10 wasn't necessarily my 10 favourite albums. What I wanted to do was represent my record collection in a cross section of just 10. So if I ended up with just those 10, I think I would be fairly happy in that I could listen to a different style of music depending on what mood I was in, and not just be stuck to necessarily one genre or one style of music. So that's it. Longer than I expected, but I wanted to get an entry, and I did say to him I would try. Check out Randy's channel if you haven't. So I got introduced in mainly through the Ramones stuff, but I've learned a few other things around sort of garage music and psych by watching his channel. Not necessarily my type of music, but I enjoy watching. Certainly within the VC, a diverse range of people's channels and tastes. It's really good. I just love watching people describe their love of music. So that's a lot. I'm going to go back and sit there. Sorry, Jeff mentioned in my last video that I managed to go all the way through without drinking, so I just did it again. So I thought I have to do that for him. Thank you for watching. Hope you like that, and I'll be back with one of my normal videos probably tomorrow. Cheers.